I used to think hospitals were only scary to people who didn't work in them. When you're a nurse, you get used to everything. Blood, screaming, death, families crying in hallways, monitors flatlining at 3 in the morning. You learn to keep your face calm, your voice steady, and your hands moving. But there was one night shift that changed the way I looked at empty rooms forever. The hospital I worked in was old. Not historic and beautiful old. More like patched up, half-renovated, pipes knocking in the walls old. Parts of the building had been standing for decades. Some wings had been modernized, but others still had narrow halls, yellow lights, and corners where the security cameras never seemed to work right. I worked on a medical ward, mostly elderly patients, post-surgery patients, infections, breathing problems, that kind of thing. Night shift was usually quiet in a strange way. Not peaceful, just quiet enough that every little sound felt too loud. That night, we were short-staffed. There were only 3 of us covering the ward. Around 2:15 a.m., one of my patients pressed the call button. Room 12. I remember that because room 12 was at the far end of the corridor, near a storage room nobody liked going into. The patient inside was an older man named Mr. Harris. He had been admitted with a bad infection, but he was mentally sharp. No demencia, no confusión, no hallucinaciones. He knew where he was, why he was there, and what day it was. When I entered, he was sitting straight up in bed. His face was pale, not sick pale, terrified pale. I asked, "Mr. Harris, are you okay?" He looked past me, toward the door. Then he whispered, "Tell that nurse to stop standing there." I turned around. Nobody was there. I thought maybe another staff member had just walked by. So I stepped in a hallway and looked left and right. Empty. I came back in and said, "There's no one there." He shook his head slowly. "She was right behind you." I tried to stay professional. I checked his oxygen. Normal. Temperature. Still elevated, but not dangerously high. Blood pressure slightly raised, probably because he was scared. I asked him what he saw. He said, "A woman. A nurse. Old uniform. White dress. White cap." She was looking at me like she was waiting. That made my stomach tighten, but I didn't show it. I told him sometimes shadows could look strange at night. He didn't argue. He just stared at the doorway and said, "She's not a shadow." I stayed with him for a few minutes until he calmed down. Then I went back to the nurse's station. One of the senior nurses, Dana, saw my face and asked what happened. I told her Mr. Harris said he saw a nurse in an old uniform. Dana didn't laugh. She just looked down the corridor toward room 12. Then she said, "White cap. Still there." She didn't say anything else for a few seconds. Then she told me that other patients had described the same woman before. Always on night shift. Always near the end of the ward. Always wearing an old-fashioned nurse uniform. I asked her if she was joking. She said, "I wish I was." Around 3 a.m., the ward became colder. That sounds dramatic, but it was true. The temperature dropped so suddenly that one of the other nurses asked if the heating had failed. The corridor near room 12 felt different from the rest of the ward. Not just cold, heavy. Then the call light went off again. Room 12. I went back, but this time Dana came with me. Mr. Harris was lying flat now, clutching his blanket with both hands. Before I could speak, he said, "She was touching the foot of the bed." Dana asked, "Did she say anything?" He nodded. "What did she say?" His eyes filled with tears. She said, "Not yet." The room went silent. I checked everything again. He was medically stable. There was no reason for the panic except what he believed he had seen. Dana pulled me aside and said we should move him closer to the station. Unofficially, neither of us wanted him in room 12. We prepared another bed, and I went back to tell him. That's when I noticed something. The blanket at the foot of his bed had been folded back. Not thrown, not kicked, folded, neatly, like someone had prepared him to be moved. Mr. Harris saw me looking at it and whispered, "She did that." I didn't answer. We moved him to a different room. For the next hour, nothing happened. The ward went back to normal. Monitors beeped. Patients slept. The heating seemed fine. Then, at 4:40 a.m., the call bell rang again. Room 12. But room 12 was empty. I looked at Dana. She looked at me. Neither of us moved for a second. Then we walked down together. The red light above the door was flashing. Inside, the bed was empty, the sheets still wrinkled from where Mr. Harris had been lying earlier. Dana reached over and canceled the call. The room went dark. Then, from the bathroom inside room 12, we heard a woman cough. Not a loud cough. A tired human cough. Dana whispered, "Stay here." She pushed the bathroom door open. Empty. We checked behind the door, the shower curtain, the cabinet. Nothing. Then the call bell started ringing again while we were still standing inside the room. The button was on the bed. No one was touching it. Dana grabbed it and unplugged it from the wall. The ringing stopped. We left the room and shut the door. At the nurse's station, nobody said anything for a while. Around 5:30 a.m., Mr. Harris pressed his call button from his new room. I went to him immediately. He looked calmer, but exhausted. He asked, "Did you move me because of her?" I said, "We moved you so we could keep a closer eye on you." He gave me a sad smile. Then he said, "She isn't trying to scare anyone." I asked him what he meant. He said, "She told me she watches the ones who are close." I felt every hair on my arms rise. Before the end of my shift, Mr. Harris stabilized. He didn't die. In fact, he improved over the next few days and was discharged. But room 12 remained empty for 2 nights afterward. On my next shift, I was restocking supplies when I saw a file folder on the counter near the old storage room. It had fallen from a stack of archived papers. Inside was an old staff photo from decades earlier. Nurses lined up in white uniforms, caps on their heads. And there she was. I knew it before Dana said a word. The woman Mr. Harris had described. Small frame, serious face, white cap, hands folded in front of her. Dana told me her name had been Margaret. She had worked in that ward years ago, back before the renovations. According to staff stories, she died suddenly after collapsing during night shift. Some people said she never left. I don't know what I believe. I know patients see things. I know tired staff hear things. I know old buildings make strange sounds. But I also know what I saw. An empty room calling for help. A folded blanket. A cough from a bathroom with no one inside. And an old photograph of a nurse who looked exactly like the woman my patient described. After that night, I never walked past room 12 without looking inside. Most nights, it was empty, but sometimes when the ward was quiet and the lights were low, I would pass that doorway and smell something faint in the air. Not disinfectant, not medicine, lavender, the kind old nurses used to wear. And every time I smelled it, I walked a little faster. Working security at night sounds easy until you actually do it. People think you sit in a chair, drink bad coffee, and watch camera screens until morning. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes you're alone in a building so quiet that your own breathing starts to sound like someone else's. My first security job was in an old commercial building on the edge of town. It used to be offices, then storage, then some kind of training center. By the time I got there, only the first floor was still being used during the day. The second and third floors were mostly empty. My job was simple. Clock in at 10 p.m. patrol every hour. Check doors. Check stairwells. Make sure nobody broke in. Don't sleep. The day guard gave me the usual instructions on my first night. Then, right before leaving, he said, "Don't waste time on the third floor." I asked why. He shrugged and said, "Nothing up there." That was a stupid answer, but I didn't push. For the first week, everything was normal. Boring even. The building made noises, but old buildings always do. Pipes knocked. Vents hummed. Metal doors clicked when the temperature changed. Then came Thursday night. At 1:03 a.m., I was sitting at the front desk watching the cameras when I saw movement on the third floor hallway feed. Just a quick blur. I leaned closer. The hallway was empty. The third floor had 4 cameras. One by the elevator, one near the men's restroom, one near the old conference room, and one pointed toward the far stairwell. I checked all 4. Nothing. Then the motion sensor on the third floor triggered again. This time, the camera near the conference room flickered. When the picture came back, one of the doors was open. I knew that door had been closed during my last patrol. I grabbed my flashlight and radio. The building didn't have another guard on site, but we had a dispatcher we could call if something serious happened. I didn't call yet. I didn't want to sound scared over an open door. I took the stairs. The third floor smelled stale, like dust and old carpet. The lights were motion activated, and they clicked on one section at a time as I walked down the hallway. Click, click, Click. Each row of lights turned on ahead of me. But behind me, they slowly went dark again. I reached the conference room. The door was open about 6 inches. I pushed it with my flashlight. Inside were stacked chairs, a long table, and a dry erase board still hanging on the wall. Nothing else. I stepped in. That's when I saw a writing on the board. At first, I thought it was old marker stains. But when I got closer, I saw the words clearly. "You're late." I stared at it. The marker tray was empty. The room had been unused for months. I radioed dispatch and said I had signs of possible trespassing. The dispatcher asked if I saw anyone. I said no. Then from the hallway behind me, I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I turned off my flashlight. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. The hallway lights were still on near the conference room door. I could see the carpet outside. The footsteps stopped right outside. Then a shadow crossed the doorway. Not a person. A shadow. Like someone had walked past the light, except there was no body attached to it. I stepped into the hallway. Empty. The lights at the far end clicked off. Then the next set. Then the next. The darkness was moving toward me. I backed away. Click. Another row went out. Click. Another. I ran to the stairwell. Behind me, I heard the conference room door slam shut so hard the walls shook. I didn't stop running until I reached the lobby. For the rest of the night, I stayed at the desk with every light on. At 4 a.m., the third-floor motion sensor went off again. I ignored it. The next morning, the day guard arrived and saw me sitting there wide awake, pale and angry. He said, "Third floor?" I asked him what the hell was going on. He sighed like he had been waiting for that question. Then he told me the story. Years earlier, before the building was mostly abandoned, a man had worked late on the third floor almost every night. He was some kind of facilities supervisor. Reliable, quiet, always the last to leave. One night, he had a heart attack in the third-floor conference room. Nobody found him until morning. The official story was simple and sad. But after that, night guards started reporting strange things. Doors opening, motion sensors triggering, footsteps in empty halls, writing on boards, lights turning off one by one. One guard quit after claiming someone whispered his name through the third-floor restroom door. Another refused to go above the first floor after midnight. I asked the day guard why nobody told me. He said, "Because if we tell new guys, they don't come back." I should have quit right then, but I needed the money, so I stayed. The next few nights, I avoided the third floor. If the motion sensor triggered, I wrote system error in the log. If a camera flickered, I ignored it. If I heard footsteps above me, I turned the volume up on the tiny radio at the desk. Then, 2 weeks later, the elevator moved by itself. It was 2:27 a.m. I was sitting in the lobby when the elevator doors opened. Nobody came out. The elevator had been parked on the third floor. I stood up slowly. The doors stayed open. Then the speaker inside the elevator crackled. A voice came through. Not loud, not clear, but I heard it. "You're late." My whole body went cold. The doors closed. The elevator went back up. Third floor. The camera feed flickered again. When it cleared, the old conference room door was open. I called dispatch immediately and told them I had a possible intruder. Then I called the police. While I waited, I watched the camera. The conference room door slowly opened wider. A chair slid into the hallway. Nobody touched it. It just scraped across the carpet, inch by inch, until it stopped directly under the camera. Then the feed went black. The police arrived 15 minutes later. 2 officers checked the building with me. We went floor by floor. First floor clear. Second floor clear. Then the third. The conference room door was closed. Inside, the chairs were stacked. The table was empty. The board was clean. But the officers found something strange. The room was freezing. Not cold like bad heating. Freezing like someone had left a window open in winter. Except the windows didn't open. One officer asked if the building had temperature control problems. I said yes, because that was easier than telling the truth. After they left, I wrote my report and resigned before sunrise. I never worked another shift there. Months later, I ran into the day guard at a gas station. He told me they had stopped using overnight security after another guard walked out mid-shift and left the front doors unlocked. I asked what happened. He said the guard heard someone on the third floor dragging furniture. When he checked the cameras, he saw a man standing in the hallway. Not walking, not moving, just standing there, facing the camera. The guard called out over the intercom, "Sir, you need to leave." And the man on the camera lifted one hand and pointed behind the guard. That was when the guard turned around and saw the same man standing in the lobby. I don't know if the building is still there. I don't care. But I still remember that elevator opening by itself. The empty hallway. The voice through the speaker. "You're late." And sometimes when I'm alone in a quiet building, I still check behind me before I look at any security camera. Because cameras only show you what's in front of them, not what's already standing beside you. Hotels are never really quiet. Even at night, when the guests are sleeping, the building is alive. Ice machines hum. Pipes click. Elevators move. Doors open and close. Somewhere, someone's always coughing, laughing, arguing, or walking barefoot across carpet. I work housekeeping at an old hotel in the American South. I won't name it because it still operates, and I'm not interested in causing problems. But the building was old enough to have stories. Every hotel like that has stories. Guests claimed they heard children running in empty hallways. Staff said lights turned on in locked rooms. One bartender swore he saw a woman in a long dress standing at the top of the stairs after closing. Most of us laughed about it, until it happened to us. My shift started early. Housekeeping usually began around 7:30 a.m., but during busy weekends, some of us came in before sunrise to prepare carts and check rooms that guests had already left. The fourth floor was always the worst. The air felt thicker up there. The hallway lights were dimmer. Even when the hotel was full, the fourth floor felt empty in a way the others didn't. There was one room everyone hated. Room 417. It was a corner room with old wallpaper, a heavy wooden dresser, and a bathroom mirror that always looked slightly fogged, even after it had been cleaned. Guests complained about that room constantly. Not about dirt, about noise. They said someone knocked from inside the walls. They said the TV turned on by itself. One couple checked out at 3 a.m. after claiming they woke up to find the desk chair pulled up beside the bed. Management blamed electrical issues, plumbing, old pipes, guest imagination. Housekeeping blamed room 417. One Monday morning, I was assigned to clean the fourth floor alone. I didn't like it, but I had done it before. Most guests had checked out Sunday afternoon, so the floor was almost empty. My cartwheel squeaked as I pushed it down the hallway. I remember the sound because it was the only thing making noise. I started with 409, then 411, then 413. Normal rooms, messy towels, half-used shampoo, coffee cups, nothing strange. Then I reached 417. The Do Not Disturb sign was not on the door. Checkout had already passed. I knocked 3 times and said, "Housekeeping." No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I opened the door with my master key. The room was cold. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing was the smell. Old perfume. Sweet, powdery, and wrong. The room had been used, but barely. The bed was made, but someone had slept on top of the comforter. There was one glass of water on the nightstand. The TV remote sat perfectly centered on the desk. I stepped inside and let the door close behind me. That was my first mistake. I stripped the towels from the bathroom, sprayed the sink, and started wiping the mirror. The fog look wouldn't go away. No matter how hard I wiped, the glass stayed cloudy. Then, slowly, letters appeared in the fog. Not written by a hand. Appearing from inside the glass. "Get out." I froze. My rag slipped out of my hand and hit the sink. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. Then I backed out of the bathroom. The room door was closed. I walked toward it fast, trying not to run. Before I reached it, the deadbolt turned. By itself. Click. I stopped. The latch flipped over next. Clack. You whispered. Then someone knocked on the door. From the inside. 3 slow knocks. Knock. 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 But I was inside the room. The knocks came from the door right in front of me, as if someone was standing on my side of it, inches away, knocking to be let out. I grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. I pulled harder. Nothing. Then the TV turned on. Static filled the room. The volume rose until it hurt my ears. Through the static, I heard a woman humming. Softly, like a lullaby. I turned around. The desk chair had moved. It was now facing the bed. I hadn't touched it. The humming grew louder. Then the bed sank. just slightly, as if someone had sat down on the edge. I screamed. I pulled the door handle again, and this time it opened easily. I ran into the hallway and didn't stop until I reached the service elevator. Another housekeeper, Maria, found me downstairs shaking so badly I couldn't hold my coffee. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked, "Was it 417? That was when I knew. I wasn't the first. Maria told me the story during lunch, in a low voice so management wouldn't hear. Years before, a woman had stayed in 417 for several nights. Some said she was waiting for her husband. Some said she had nowhere else to go. Staff noticed she never left the room during the day. She requested extra towels, tea, and nothing else. Then one morning, housekeeping knocked. No answer. They opened the door and found her dead. Maria said nobody knew exactly what happened, or nobody wanted to talk about it. But after that, 417 changed. Guests complained of perfume, humming, knocks. A woman reflected in the bathroom mirror. One housekeeper claimed she saw wet footprints appear on the bathroom floor while she was cleaning. Another said she found the words, "I'm still here," written on the mirror after she had wiped it clean. Management never confirmed anything. Hotels don't like stories that scare guests away. A week later, I was sent back to the 4th floor. I told myself I would clean every room except 417. If anyone asked, I'd say I ran out of time. But when I reached the hallway, my cart was already parked outside 417. I had left it by the elevator. The door to 417 was open. Not wide, just enough. Inside, the lights were off. I stood there, gripping the cart handle. Then I heard humming, the same soft lullaby, from inside the room. I backed away. The door opened a little more. On the carpet, just inside the doorway, was a towel, folded neatly. On top of it was my name tag. I looked down at my uniform. My name tag was gone. I quit that afternoon. I didn't give 2 weeks. I didn't explain. I just handed in my badge and left. Years later, I still hate hotel mirrors. I hate old perfume. And whenever I stay somewhere, I always check the bathroom first. Not for cleanliness. Not for towels. For writing on a glass. Because some rooms are not empty after checkout. Some guests never leave.